Coco lives in a world of magic and fantastical creatures, where witches are the only people who could use magic, or so they wanted everyone to think. In a world brimming with magic, a young girl named Coco lived with her mother who worked as a fabric dealer. Ever since her birth, she had always been fascinated by the magic in the world, and believed that witches are the coolest people in the world. All she ever wanted to be able to perform magic herself. But she knew that she was dreaming about something impossible, as her mother told her about it multiple times, that witches were born and not made. She was a hard-working girl who took all the fabric to a nearby pond to wash them by hand and make sure that they were perfect for the customer. Even the pond was blessed by a witch, as no matter what, the pond cleaned itself with magic so that humans can use it for washing clothes and even bathing, without corrupting the waters, which were also a life source for the animals living in the area. Coco returns back to her house after washing all the clothes and climbs on top of the roof to dry them out. While pretending to be a witch who knew how to make things fly, she suddenly notices a flying horse carriage right over her. She was delighted to see the magic in the air, but to her surprise and happiness, the carriage started descending near her house. She immediately gets excited and runs down the staircase to find her mom and tell her about it. But when she opens the door, she ends up bumping into a white-haired man who is trying to act like the discount Gojo Satoru. She immediately apologizes to him, and he smiles at her, claiming that it was his fault as he was standing at the wrong place. Before she could reply to anything, she overhears a bunch of women going over the fabric in the store for sale, and discussing how they can't believe that they are getting such amazing fabrics in the middle of nowhere. Her heart fills up with joy as she wonders whether these are the people who came in the flying carriage. But Gojo tells her that he is not with them actually. Coco's mom tells her to stop standing there and help her with the customers. She then turns towards Gojo and asks what he wants. Gojo replies that he is looking for a specific smoke-colored fabric, but tells them that he can come back again if they are busy right now. Coco intervenes and tells him not to worry, as she can help him with the fabric. Gojo is a little surprised since Coco looks pretty young, but her mother tells him not to worry about it as he is in good hands. Coco immediately turns towards her mother and asks whether she can go outside and have a look at the flying carriage once she is done. And her mother immediately reminds her that she is not allowed to mess around with the property of their customers, but she promises that she is only going to look at it from afar and won't even go near. Her mother finally agrees, and Coco happily returns back to Gojo and takes the measurements from him before heading into the back room. She quickly finds the color of fabric that the man needed and lays it on the work desk before getting out her tools as she starts measuring the length of the fabric. She then takes out a wooden pencil dipped in charcoal and marks the end point before calming her breath down and creating a straight line with the charcoal in one go. With that done, she takes out the shears and uses them to cut the fabric perfectly straight in one go without skipping a single beat. She was so engrossed in her job that she didn't even notice that Gojo was standing there the entire time observing her as he picks up the fabric and claims that he is surprised and impressed by the incredible focus and steady hands that she possesses. There was no hesitation in her movements, and her finishing was precise and perfect. He claims that he had no idea that a village like this could be fostering such an incredibly skilled artisan, and calls her work magic. She wonders whether Gojo is trying to take her back to the Epstein's Island, and tells him that her job is no magic, and it is just repetitive work. While magic is something pure and shiny, unbelievably beautiful, something so precious that she doesn't think there is any words to define that. Gojo feels the raw passion this girl has for magic, and asks why she loves magic so much, and Coco replies that when she was just a little girl, her mother took her to a festival in the nearby city. Everything was beautiful there, and while following a butterfly, she ended up meeting a masked witch in a back alley. The witch asked her whether she is interested in magic, but back then she didn't really know what it was, so the witch showed her all the things that could be achieved by magic. She was awed by the beauty of the demonstration and immediately agreed to buy the magic book and the wand from the witch. Once she returned back to her mother, she showed her the book, and her mother wondered why she would spend her money on such useless items. Coco, however, was happy with her purchase and still in awe with the magic that she saw from the witch. She then told her mom that once she grows up, she will become a witch and use her magic to make the world a more vibrant place. Her mother, however, replies that what she is dreaming of is not possible, since you can't simply decide to be a witch and use magic. It's a power that you are born with, and unfortunately, it's not something that ordinary people like them can possess. Ever since that day, it had been her dream to be able to use magic, and no matter how much she knows that what she wants is impossible, she simply can't seem to let go of that dream. Gojo seemed interested and was about to speak, when suddenly they heard some voices coming from outside, and Coco immediately rushes out to see what the commotion was about. It turns out that the carriage overturned and fell over, while the driver was still trying to get his horses in control. Coco finds two of his friends on the scene, and they reveal that they were trying to have a closer look. But one of them ended up bumping their head on the carriage, which spooked the horses, and the carriage fell over. The women who the carriage belonged to were furious, claiming that it was their father's carriage. Coco's mother immediately apologized to them from the side of the boys, but the women claimed that her apology can't really fix their carriage, and without a carriage they can't really head back home. Thankfully, Gojo was there and told the women to calm down so he could take a look at the carriage. The women tell him that this is not a simple carriage which a mechanic could fix. It is a magical carriage which her father bought for her on her birthday. Just then, Gojo pulls out a pointed cap from his cape, and immediately the voices from the women change into soft purrs, as they realize that Gojo is not an ordinary person but a witch. The women beg him to have a look at the carriage, and Gojo immediately figures out that the problem is that a simple spell came undone and could be fixed easily. The problem is that he would need some place private to practice the spell, and without a second thought, Coco tells him to use the workshop, hoping that maybe she would be able to accompany him and finally see what casting a spell looks like. Unfortunately for her though, her plans come undone when Gojo tells her to stand guard outside the workshop as no one is allowed to come in. She wonders how magic is always around them, but no one has ever seen a witch perform magic, as the witches keep it as a proper secret which couldn't be known by mere humans. While she was brooding outside the cabin, she hears the sound of the boys once again, who climb on top of the roof in the hopes of peeking inside. But instead of stopping them, Coco ends up joining them, only to find out that the witch had already barred all the windows, so there is no way anyone could see inside. The boys get bored and climb down, but Coco had other ideas. She manages to get into the upper floor and grabs her magic book that she bought when she was young, and realizes that she can actually see inside. At first she tries to follow the instructions, but her curiosity gets the better of her, and she peeks in only to be shocked to see that Gojo wasn't chanting any spells. In fact, he was using his pen to draw something on the wheel of the carriage. That's when she realizes that witches don't cast spells, they draw them into existence. Once Gojo was done, he starts moving outside to call Coco in, forcing Coco to make a run for it. By the time Gojo opens the front door to call Coco in, he finds her dirty and panting. Thankfully, the carriage ended up working properly and the women left. By the time evening fell, they were done with all the customers, and her mother turned towards her, claiming that she was a little scared that she would want to go off with that witch, and ever since losing her father to the disease, Coco is the only thing she has in this world, which she can't bear to lose. Coco replies that she would never leave her and hugs her tightly, before returning back home to have some warm dinner. Soon after that they change into their nightgowns and say their goodnights as Coco walks upstairs to her room. Once inside, she quickly takes out the magic book and the wand that she had, and figures out that the wand is actually just a pen, and the picture book is actually a guide to make magical symbols. She quickly sits down at her table and starts drawing the design on the page onto a rough sheet of parchment. After a while she manages to make the design roughly, but doesn't notice that the circle wasn't completed yet. Just when she thought that it was a long shot anyways, a bit of ink drops from her pen and completes the circle. Immediately sparks start flying out of the paper, completely awing her, and she starts bouncing up and down with joy, realizing that she just performed real-life magic. That was the start though, as she immediately starts trying all the different sorts of magical symbols from the book, and even manages to start a fire on her paper. After several tries she starts getting the hang of it, and realizes that the bigger the drawing the more powerful the spell is, and the neater drawings produce spells that last much longer. But being able to draw big and neat is pretty difficult. She comes up with a plan to trace the drawings, as that is much easier to do compared to copying it. So she turns a new page and starts tracing the new pattern. Suddenly, unbeknownst to her, darkness starts spreading behind her, and just as she completes her spell, someone grabs her from behind and jumps out the window. It turns out to be Gojo, who looks terrified and asks which spell did she just use. Coco is scared and replies that she has no idea, while Gojo continues flying in the air. Suddenly, he hears Coco's mom woken up by the ruckus and notices the entire house is turning into an icy crystal. Gojo realizes horrified that Coco just tapped into forbidden magic, but he didn't have enough time to warn her mom, who turns into a crystal alongside the house. Coco loses all control and starts kicking the witch to let her go so she could help her mother, while Gojo struggles to grab her since he can't let her go in the air. Coco, however, manages to kick herself free and would have died for it, if not for Gojo saving her at the very last second from becoming a pancake. Coco, however, is beyond terrified and doesn't care about anything as she rushes straight at her mother. She would have gotten turned into a crystal as well, but Gojo picked her up at the last moment and took off into the air once again. Coco cries relentlessly, apologizing for using magic as she didn't know what would happen, and Gojo believes her. He claims that it was all kept a secret from the masses to prevent tragedies like this. All a person need to do magic is a special ink and a set of casting seals. That's all needed to perform magic. But the one great rule amongst the witches is to never reveal that information to anyone. Since now Coco knows the truth, he has no option but to remove her memories, but Coco begs him not to, as if she forgets about everything. How will she save her mom? She claims that she knows all the drawings by heart and all she wants is to save her mother. Gojo suddenly realizes that the person who sold her this book might be one of the evil gangs of witches who are working against the witches, and realizes that this girl's memories might link one of the members to the gang. Coco asks whether they could save her mother if they find out who sold her the book, and Gojo replies that there is a small chance of saving her that way. And Coco begs her not to erase her memories as she would do anything to save her mom. Gojo asks whether she will always keep this magic a secret and Coco agrees. He then asks whether she is going to try her best to learn and Coco gets surprised. Gojo reveals that if she is going to have the knowledge, it's best that she learns how to control magic. So from this day onwards, she is also a witch. The excitement and fear was too much for little Coco, and she soon ends up sleeping peacefully. By the time she wakes up, she finds herself chilly with the morning rays of the sun hitting her face. She looks around and notices that what happened was not a dream since Gojo is sitting beside her, and they are literally flying in a flying carriage. Gojo notices that she is up and tells her not to worry as they are very close to the location. He realizes that the poor girl must be really cold since she is still in her bedclothes, so he offers her a cape to cover herself with for more warmth. Soon a clearing comes into view, and he reveals that what they see in front of them is his personal workshop where he researches upon magic. And from now on, this is the place where Coco will stay and learn more about magic and control it. Soon they descend down to earth and Gojo continues walking towards the houses and tells Coco that she doesn't need to worry about her house. As before leaving, he spreads some special seeds in the area, which will soon create a protective barrier around the house to prevent any strangers from getting too close. Since as of now, they have absolutely no idea how powerful the spell she cast on the house is. Suddenly, Coco stops in her tracks and starts tearing up. Gojo is a little confused and walks up to her, asking whether she is hurt, but Coco replies that she promised her mom that she would never leave her yesterday. And not even a day has passed, and she has already left her behind. Gojo comforts her and tells her not to worry, promising that they will soon figure out what happened to her mom and get her out of the spell safely. But for now, she needs to wipe off her tears as this is going to be her home for now, till she learns how to handle magic properly. He immediately uses magic to create a water ball and puts it in a device before handing it over to Coco. She is still confused, but Gojo doesn't realize that and tells her to wash her eyes while he gets her some change of clothes. While she was still standing wondering how the hell she is supposed to use this water, a voice comes from behind, and she turns around to find another girl roughly her age with pink hair smiling at her. As she claims that as far as spells go, the one used in that water is pretty simple. She comes down and grabs the device out of her hand, claiming that this magic concentrates all the moisture around in the air and converts it into a ball of water, and if they want to use it, all they need to do is tilt it a little and the water will come rushing out. Coco is amazed by it and thanks the girl for teaching her how to use the device. Before she could wait for a reply, another girl emerges with blue hair, who greets Coco very casually before she continues on her path. Coco notices that the blue-haired girl is holding a bunch of pens and some ink, and realizes that these girls might be witches as well. She asks them about it, and the pink-haired girl replies that they are apprentices right now, and asks whether she herself is not an apprentice. Coco replies with a smile that it might be a little early calling herself a student of Gojo, since she knows absolutely nothing about magic, and it was only a couple of hours ago that she drew her first ever spell. The moment she reveals that, the atmosphere in the room shifts as the girls look at her with fear in their eyes. The pink girl asks whether she is the one whose rumors they have been hearing since the morning, but Coco has no idea what they are talking about. The pink-haired girl tells her that there has been a rumor that an outside, who was a commoner, made use of forbidden magic, but her memories were not erased, and she was taken in as a student. But they had no idea that it was their own teacher who did that. Before they could talk more though, Gojo arrives and introduces the pink-haired girl as Tia, and the blue-haired girl as Rich. With that, he hands her a garb, claiming that all his students wear these clothes, so Coco takes it graciously. Once appropriately dressed, she comes back and sits down while Gojo claims that he is now going to tell her about the history of magic. He begins that long ago, everyone in humanity had the power to wield magic, as all you needed was a special ink and some parchment to draw on. Every single person on Earth knew how to make use of magic, and it made the impossible possible. But it's the nature of humans to destroy things, and when the absolute power is given to humans, they find a way to misuse it. Many horrific and dangerous spells were created during this time, leading to severe destruction and death. Many wars were waged, but there were no winners and only losers. At that time, a group of highly specialized and strong mages decided to turn away from the ways of war, and managed to create a spell which could remove the memories from anyone. With that, they removed the memories of the entire human race that magic could be wielded by anyone, and only the disciples of those first mages were allowed the information to use magic. The rest of the world from then on believed that magic could only be wielded by a select few special individuals who were born witches. If the truth came out again, the world would again fall into chaos and destruction, just like it did in the times of old. That's the reason why this secret is so well guarded, and why the story of her using forbidden magic has traveled so far so quickly. Coco looks down with guilt in her eyes, and then asks Gojo, what exactly is a forbidden spell? With a look of sadness, Gojo replies that forbidden magic contains the spell from the days of war and destruction, that were forbidden to be used at the day the pact was made between the mages. In simple words, the magic which is used to hurt people. Coco immediately walks up to him and begs him to let her learn everything she can about the forbidden magic, because she never wants to use one ever again, and wants to find a cure for her mother. Gojo takes her down into a basement and explains on the way that even though forbidden magic are abundant in nature, there are a few types which could be understood easily. The first one is the magic which is used directly on a person. This includes transformation, age alterations, manipulating thoughts, or directly healing or harming a person. This magic has only one exception, which is removing the memories of people, which could be used in times when somehow a commoner learns about their secret. That is the reason why most of the magic is cast on items such as carriages, lamps, or even windows. He then shows her a tricolored windows which when he rotates creates an anywhere door basically, and the scenery outside, which was just mountains and grasslands, gets converted into a misty lake. Gojo then points at a huge tower, known as the Tower of Tomes, claiming that the moment a magical book is written, a copy immediately is created inside of it, so that no knowledge could be ever lost. Coco immediately tells Gojo to take her to the tower, as she will find the copy of her picture book non-stop. But Gojo tells her not to be so eager, and soon enough, a rumble is heard as a giant snake emerges from the lake and splashes water in through the window, knocking them down. Gojo turns back the window to return to their normal place, and explains that in order to reach the tower, they would have to go through the librarian's trial first. He explains that the Tower of Tome is guarded by 4 librarians, and in order to reach the tower, she will have to pass through all of their trials, which means that she will have to become an excellent witch before she could think of doing anything else. He realizes that he might have been too hard on the very first day, so he turns the scenery once again to a meadow of white flowers, claiming that the magic which is not forbidden is the one which brings everyone joy, so they should start there and then slowly move ahead. With that, he brings her down to her room and claims that she will be sharing a room with her roommate, whose name is Agate, which is a very risky name in my opinion. He claims that they will share one workshop and their bedrooms are still separate. With that, he gives her time to settle down while he returns to tend to some other businesses. Coco looks around the workshop eagerly, thinking about how she always dreamt about where witches work, and now she is seeing it in person. But before she could touch anything, a voice calls from above, and she looks up to find a short-haired girl hovering above. Coco gets out of the way, and the girl lands down, claiming that she is Agate and will be her roommate from now on. Coco warmly greets her, but Agate seems very cold. She coldly asks whether she is the famous outside they all have been hearing about, and Coco looks down at her feet sad. Agate then very coldly claims that she must feel bad at the fact that because of her mistakes, her mother would never be flesh and blood again. Coco immediately tries to defend herself and claims that she is here to fix that, and she will work hard as an apprentice to become a good witch. Agate, however, seems hell-bent on starting a fight, as she seems to be jealous at the fact that everyone has to work so hard, study so much, give exams till their hands are stained in ink, but even then only a few ever get the chance to be an apprentice. But a commoner who has never done anything just became an apprentice after using forbidden magic. Before things could get heated though, Tia and Rich enter the room to call the others down for dinner. That night they have a simple meal of bread and vegetable soup, and the next day, her journey starts. Gojo comes to her room to teach her and hands over a bunch of tools which would get her started with her journey as an apprentice. He first teaches her about all the different elements of magic, which are the same as any other magical world. Water, wind, fire, and light. They are drawn as a specific symbol inside a seal, and then a circle is drawn around them. The moment the circle is drawn, the spell is activated. With all the new information causing an overload in Coco's brain, Gojo tells her to take it easy and try using all she has learned. Coco eagerly settles down on her desk and starts scribbling some symbols on the paper, but soon crumples it all up. But not before Gojo yanks it away. While she tells him not to look at it, as it looks ugly, Gojo checks it out, and claims that it is normal for the first few symbols to look misshapen as she has just started learning, and tells her not to worry about it. He does note that the circle of the seal is not connected yet. That's the reason why her spell never activated. Once she completes the circle though, the direction of her magic turns out to be wrong, and a stream of water hits Agate directly, who was also studying. Her entire parchment gets ruined, which scares Coco, who immediately starts apologizing. Agate calmly walks up to her and points out that because one of her lines is longer than the other, that's why the water gushed in a certain direction. Gojo is happy with her attention to detail, and reveals that he is going to the Great Hall of Mages for a couple of days. Until then, he tells Agate to help Coco learn about magic as much as she can. The moment Gojo was gone, Agate turns towards Coco and tells her that the cushy little lessons are over, and now she will take her true test and teach her. Coco was a little shocked, but decides not to say anything, and the very next morning, Agate takes Coco near the magic window and tells her to get ready to take her first test. Coco is extremely nervous as she has never done anything like this before, and wants to wait for Gojo to return back before they do anything like this. But Agate tells her that she passed this test when she was just 10. So it's a rite of passage that everyone needs to go through if they want to become an apprentice. She explains that the first test is going to be the consent of the crown, in which she is only allowed to carry 3 devices with her alongside her magical components. She has to then travel through the area and reach the peak of the data ranges on her own power, where she has to find and pick the diadem herb which is found there. Agate hands her a guidance orb, which will point her to the right direction, and also gives her the water magic device to carry water with her. Agate claims that even though she is allowed 3 items, she can only use 2 right now because of her low level, so that's what she should try with. Coco nods and puts everything in her backpack, while Agate turns the magical window to the location where Coco will have to start her journey. But before leaving, Coco asks whether she can have those magical pair of shoes as her third contraption. She claims that she saw Gojo use it when he saved her life, and she saw Agate use it too the other evening, and wonders whether she can borrow it for the test. Agate lets out a sight and takes out her shoes before pushing them in Coco's hand, and then pushes her out of the window so that she can start the test quickly. Once Coco was out in the jungle, Agate calls out to her and tells her that she should try her very best, as everyone is only allowed to give this test once, and if they fail, they will never be allowed to become an apprentice ever again. With that, Agate disappears, leaving Coco completely on her own in the middle of nowhere. Coco gets back up, but suddenly feels terrified of everything in this new area. She talks to herself and manages to calm herself down, after which she takes out the guidance orb, and realizes that she has absolutely no idea how this orb works. Suddenly, the thing inside the orb starts levitating when pointing in a certain direction, while it stays still if pointed in a different direction. Seeing this, Coco decides to follow one of the paths where the orb is showing some movement, thinking that a little mountain climbing is nothing to worry about, but ends up falling face first right at the very start. She gets herself back up and starts moving with her willpower, thinking that if Agate managed to pass the exam when she was just 10, she should be able to deal with the exam as well. The way is not easy though, with spider webs everywhere and vines of trees outstretched beneath her feet, ready to trip her over. After a while, she finally manages to get out of the jungle and comes out into an opening of grassland with some ponds in the middle. The thing that takes her breath away, though, is the sight of flying landmasses above her. The orb points up, and she realized that this is probably the data range, and she was completely mistaken, thinking that they would be a mountain range that she will have to climb in order to reach the summit. She sits down on one of the rocks, disheartened, as she never thought that she would have to climb over floating landmasses, and wonders whether this is where her journey ends. Suddenly, she notices a weird-looking bird flying in the sky, and remembers the shoes that she borrowed from Agate, and immediately her mood gets uplifted as she quickly jumps back on her feet and orders the shoes to fly. Nothing happens apart from a strong gust of wind which causes her to lose balance. She quickly goes back to the log and checks the sole of the shoes, only to realize that there are some magical circles on the shoes, but they are divided between the two equally. This gives her an idea, and she stands once again and puts both her feet perfectly in line and brings them closer to complete the circle. The moment her feet touch each other, a green magical energy appears beneath her and slowly lifts her up in the air. She is beyond excited to be able to fly, but out of her excitement, she ends up losing her balance and falls back on the ground. She doesn't accept defeat though, as if she can fly, she will be able to reach the summit in no time. She gets up once again and brings her feet closer so she can fly again, but ends up launching herself like a Coke bottle with some mints inside and flops on the ground once again. She remembers Gojo's words about how she needs to walk before she could learn how to run, so she starts working on her basics and manages to float just a little above the ground and move forward. By the time evening fell, Coco was confident enough in her balance that she started going a little further up. Finally, she decided to try out reaching the first floating landmass and gives herself a sharp boost, reaching the top of it almost perfectly. But when she tried landing down, she ended up messing it and slips down from the land directly below. She starts panicking as beneath her is hard ground, which would break every single bone in her body. So she activates her flight once again and runs into another floating mass, where she grabs onto one of the vines, but that breaks as well, forcing her to struggle to find another vine which she can hold on to. Thankfully, she saves herself from falling down into the lake and holds on for dear life, while the sun sets over the horizon. She takes a deep breath to calm herself down. Coco drags herself out of the lake and starts squeezing the water out of her clothes, even removing her shoes, only to see that they are completely caked in mud and dirty. She decides to do some cleaning and takes out a piece of cloth and starts cleaning the shoe, without ever thinking about the magical seal. The worst happens and the magical seal ends up being wiped off, which sends her into full panic mode and wonders whether she could draw it back on. But that idea was short-lived, as when she brings out her bag, she finds that she ended up spilling all of the magical ink during her fall. As the sun starts disappearing, she wonders whether this is it, and that's where her magical journey ends. Back in the magical workshop, Tia comes down to call Agate for dinner and asks where Coco is as dinner is about to be served. Agate coolly